The Pacific Squadron was part of the United States Navy squadron stationed in the Pacific Ocean in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Initially with no United States ports in the Pacific, they operated out of storeships which provided naval supplies and purchased food and obtained water from local ports of call in the Hawaiian Islands and towns on the Pacific coast. Throughout the history of the Pacific Squadron, American ships fought against several enemies. Over one half of the United States Navy would be sent to join the Pacific Squadron during the Mexican-American War. During the American Civil War, the squadron was reduced in size when its vessels were reassigned to Atlantic duty. When the Civil War was over, the squadron was reinforced again until being disbanded just after the turn of the 20th century. History. Formation established in 1821. This small force confined its activities initially to the Pacific waters off South America, North America and Hawaii, protecting United States commercial shipping interests. It expanded its scope of operations to include the Western Pacific in 1835, when the East India Squadron joined the force. The squadron was reinforced when war with Mexico began to seem a possibility. Sailing from the east coast to the west coast around Cape Horn was a 13,000 miles to 15,000 miles journey that typically took from 130 to 210 days. Sumatran expeditions. The Pacific Squadron's first Sumatran expedition conflict arose in February 1831. Off the coast of Sumatra on February 7, the American merchant vessel Friendship out of Salem was attacked by Malay natives described as warrior pirates. The Americans were hoping to buy pepper from the natives but were instead attacked by 3 small vessels. 3 men aboard Friendship were killed, one of whom was the first mate. The remaining crew members abandoned the vessel and it was captured. The passing Dutch schooner Dolphin made a failed attempt to rescue the ship. The Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824 obligated the Dutch to ensure the safety of shipping and overland trade in and around ACEH, and precipitated the Dutch expedition on the west coast of Sumatra later that year. The surviving sailors escaped to a friendly port nearby with the help of a friendly Malay tribal chief, and then obtained the assistance of other American merchantmen to retake the plundered ship. Captain Endicott returned the ship to Salem July 16, 1831. President Andrew Jackson received word of the massacre and ordered Commodore John Downes in Potomac to punish the natives for their acts of piracy. Arriving off Sumatra exactly a year after the Friendship incident, Commodore Downes, with just under 300 Blue Jackets and Marines aboard the frigate, attacked Kuala Batu, the main village of the hostile Malays. The men went ashore in launches, during which a small naval engagement was fought. A few of the boats were armed with a light cannon and were ordered to sink 3 small pirate craft in the port. The launchers achieved the goal and then proceeded in assisting Potomac in shelling 5 enemy citadels. The 5 forts were attacked by land as well and all were eventually suppressed. Hundreds of matchlock-armed natives were killed with a loss of only 2 Americans. After the battle, Downes warned that if any more American merchant ships were attacked, another expedition would be launched in reprisal. The mission was technically a success for 6 years until 1838, when the Malays attacked and plundered a second American merchantman. In response, the second Sumatran expedition was launched by ships of the East India Squadron, which had just joined the United States exploring expedition for circumnavigation of the globe, but were able to bombard Kuala Batu and engage in the Battle of Maki without making a detour. Capture of Monterey in 1842. To the Pacific Squadron commander Commodore Thomas Ap Catesby Jones received false information that war had begun between the United States and Mexico, and that the British ship HMS Dublin was cruising off California to take control of the Mexican state. In response, Commodore Jones in his frigate United States and with the sloop Dale and Usayan sailed for California's capital, Monterey. They arrived on the 19th of October 1842 and took control of the city without bloodshed before returning it to the Mexicans on the 21st of October, when Jones discovered that war had not actually been declared. Mexican-American War. California Campaign. The Pacific Squadron was instrumental in the capture of Alta California in the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848. In the conflict's early months after war was declared on the 24th of April 1846, the American Navy, with its force of 350 to 400 Marines and Blue Jacket sailors on board several ships near California, were essentially the only significant United States military force on the Pacific coast. Marines were stationed aboard each warship to assist in close quarters, ship-to-ship combat and to serve as both shipboard guards and the primary component of boarding or landing parties. They could also be detached for extended service on land. In actual practice, some sailors on each ship were detached from each vessel to supplement the Marine force, although rarely more than would compromise a ship's ability to remain functional. The Pacific Squadron had orders, in the event of war with Mexico, to seize the ports in Mexican California and elsewhere along the Pacific coast. The only other United States force in California was a 62-man mapping expedition which had entered California in late 1845 under the command of U.S. Army Brevet Captain John C. Fremont. They had been dispatched under the auspices of the Corps of Topographical Engineers. Fremont, the son-in-law of expansionist U.S. Senator Thomas Hart Benton, had acted provocatively with California's Mexican government, and sustained a shadowy relationship with the American emigrants who began the Bear Flag Revolt on June 10, 1846 by stealing government horses they feared would be used against them. On July 5, Fremont proposed to the American insurgents that they unite with his party and become a single military group under his command. A compact was drawn up which all volunteers of the California Battalion signed and made the mark. Under John D. Sloat, Commodore of the Pacific Squadron, the US Savannah with Usayan and US Levant captured the Alta California capital city of Monterey, California on the 7th of July 1846. 2 days later, on the 9th of July, US Portsmouth, under Captain John S. Montgomery, landed 70 Marines and Blue Jacket sailors at Clark's Point in San Francisco Bay and captured Yerba Buena, which is today's San Francisco, without firing a shot. On July 11, the British Royal Navy sloop HMS Juno entered San Francisco Bay, causing Montgomery to alert his defenses. The large British ship, the 2,600-ton man-of-war HMS Collingwood, flagship of Pacific Station Commander-in-Chief Sir George S. Seymour, also showed up about this time outside Monterey Harbor. Both British ships observed, but did not tend to the conflict. Commodore Robert F. Stockton took over as the senior United States military commander in California in late July 1846. His flagship was the frigate US Congress. Stockton accepted the California Battalion under Fremont's command to help secure Southern California. The battalion left for San Diego on the Usayan on July 226. Most towns surrendered without a shot being fired. Fremont's California Battalion members were sworn in and the volunteers paid the regular United States Army salary of $25 a month for privates, with higher pay for officers. The California Battalion varied in size with time from about 160 initially to over 450 by January 1847. Pacific Squadron warships and storeships served as floating storehouses, keeping Fremont's volunteer force in the California Battalion supplied with black powder, lead shot and supplies, as well as transporting them to different California ports. The USIAN transported Fremont and about 160 of his men to the small port of San Diego, which was captured on the 29th of July 1846 without a shot being fired, leaving about 40 men to garrison San Diego. Fremont continued on to the Pueblo de Los Angeles, where on the 13th of August, with the United States Navy band playing and colors flying, the combined forces of Stockton and Fremont entered the town without a man killed, a gun fired. United States Marine Major Archibald Gillespie, Fremont's second-in-command, was appointed military commander of Los Angeles, the largest settlement in Alta California with about 1,500 residents. Gillespie had an inadequate force of from 30 to 50 troops stationed there to keep order and garrison the city. The U.S. Congress is credited with capturing the Los Angeles harbor and port at San Pedro Bay on the 6th of August 1846. The Congress later helped capture Mazatlan, Mexico on the 11th of November 1847. The revolt of about 100 Californios in Los Angeles forced Gillespie and his troops' departure on about the 24th of September 1847. Commodore Stockton used about 360 Marines and Blue Jacket sailors with 4 field pieces from the U.S. Congress in a joint operation with the approximate 70 cavalry troops supplied by United States Army Brigadier General Stephen W. Kearny, who had arrived from New Mexico, and part of Fremont's California Battalion of about 450 men to retake Los Angeles on the 10th of January 1847. The result of this Battle of Providencia was the Californios signing the Treaty of Cahuenga on the 13th of January 1847, terminating the warfare and disbanding the Californio troops in Alta California. On January 16, 1847, Commodore Stockton appointed Fremont military governor of U.S. Territorial California, a move later contested by General Kearny. The retired ship of the line U.S. Independence was brought back into service, cut down and recommissioned as a Razy frigate in 1846. The newly reconfigured ship removed the old top deck and reduced the gun count from 90 to 54, making her less well-gunned but much easier to sail. The rebuilt U.S. Independence, now classified as a heavy frigate, launched on the 4th of August 1846 when the nation was already at war with Mexico, and departed Boston the 29th of August 1846 for California. She entered Monterey Bay on the 22nd of January 1847 after a fast 146-day trip around Cape Horn, and became the flagship of Commodore William Shubrick, now commanding the Pacific Squadron. In July 1846, Colonel Jonathan D. Stevenson of New York was asked to raise a volunteer regiment of 10 companies of 77 men each to go to California with the understanding that they would be mustered out and stay in California. They were designated the 1st Regiment of New York Volunteers and fought in the California Campaign and the Pacific Coast Campaign. In August and September the regiment trained and prepared for the trip to California. 3 private merchant ships, Thomas H. Perkins, Luchu, and Susan Drew, were chartered, and the sloop US Preble was assigned convoy detail. On the 26th of September, the four ships left New York for California. 50 men who had been left behind for various reasons sailed on the 13th of November 1846 on the small storeship Us Brutus. The Susan Drew and Lu Chu reached Valparaiso, Chile by the 20th of January 1847, and after getting fresh supplies, water and wood were on the way again by the 23rd of January. The Perkins did not stop until San Francisco, reaching port on the 6th of March 1847. The Susan Drew arrived on the 20th of March 1847 and the Lu Chu arrived on the 26th of March 1847, 183 days after leaving New York. The Brutus finally arrived on the 17th of April 1847. After desertions and deaths in transit, the four ships brought 648 men to California. The companies were then deployed throughout Upper Alta and Lower Baja California from San Francisco to La Paz, Mexico. The ship Isabella sailed from Philadelphia on the 16th of August 1847 with a detachment of 100 soldiers, and arrived in California on the 18th of February 1847 the following year. At about the same time that the ship Sweden arrived with another detachment of soldiers. These soldiers were added to the existing companies of Jonathan D. Stevenson's 1st Regiment of New York Volunteers. These troops essentially took over all of the Pacific Squadron's onshore military and garrison duties and the California Battalion and Mormon Battalion's garrison duties, as well as some Baja California duties. Pacific Coast Campaign. After Alta California was secure, most of the squadron proceeded down the Pacific coast, capturing all major Baja California Peninsula cities and capturing and destroying nearly all Mexican vessels in the Gulf of California. Other mainland ports, not on the peninsula, were taken as well. The objective of the campaign was to take Mazatlan, a major supply base for Mexican forces. Usayan was given credit for 18 captures and numerous destroyed ships. Entering the Gulf of California, Independence, Congress and Cyan seized La Paz on the Baja California Peninsula, and captured and burned the small Mexican fleet at Guaymas across the Gulf on the mainland. Within a month, they cleared the Gulf of hostile ships, destroying or capturing 30 vessels. Later on, the sailors and Marines captured the town of Mazatlan, Mexico. On the 11th of November 1847, a Mexican campaign to retake the various captured ports resulted in several small battles and at least 2 sieges occurred in which the Pacific Squadron ships provided support. Usayan returned to Norfolk on the 9th of October 1848 to receive the congratulations of the Secretary of the Navy for her significant contributions to American victories in Mexico. Other ships headed home too. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in February 1848, and its subsequent ratification by the United States and Mexican legislatures, marked the end of the Mexican-American War. American Civil War. The extent of the Pacific Squadron's responsibility was further enlarged in the 1850s when California and Oregon were admitted as U.S. states and Navy bases on the West Coast were established. The U.S. sailing Navy's use of sailing ships declined as armored steamships were introduced before the American Civil War. The Pacific Squadron was far removed from the fighting during the conflict, though some vessels of the squadron were reassigned to duty in the Atlantic and fought in engagements such as the Battle of Forts Jackson and St. Philip. Anti-piracy operations. In July 1870, the pirate ship Forward attacked and captured the Mexican port city of Guaymas, Sonora in the Gulf of California. There the pirates robbed the foreign residents and persuaded by force the United States consulate to supply the forward with coal. Then the pirates sailed south for Boca Chica, Sinaloa. The Pacific Squadron, with Rear Admiral William Shubrick, was informed of the incident, so the U.S. Mohican was sent to destroy the pirate threat. After arriving in the area in early August, Mohican's men discovered that the forward was at Boca Chica's harbor in the Chicapan River. A boat expedition was launched and attacked the pirate ship on the 17th of August 1870. The battle ended with an American victory and the burning and sinking of the pirate steamer Oahu expedition. An American expedition to Oahu occurred in late 1873 to early 1874. The Pacific Squadron sloops Ustasca, Aurora, and Portsmouth, under Lieutenant Commander Theodore F. Jewell, set sail to open negotiations with King Lunalilo about the duty-free exportation of sugar from the island to America. However, during the proceedings, Lunalilo died on February 3 of 1874, which suspended negotiations until the electoral process was completed. The wife of the king, Queen Emma, ran against the future King Kalakaua, and when he won she was very upset and decided to lead an armed mob in an attack on the representatives in Honolulu courthouse. As a result, 150 sailors and Marines were landed from the American ships, plus another 70 to 80 from the British sloop HMS Tenedos. The riot was mostly quelled by nightfall, but an occupation lasted until February 20, by which time negotiations regarding sugar were concluded. The king also allowed the Americans to build the first repair and coaling station in Pearl Harbor. Second Samoan Civil War. In 1899, another civil war broke out in Samoa between rebels loyal to King Matafa and federal forces of Prince Tanu. Pacific Squadron Rear Admiral Albert Coutts in Philadelphia launched an expedition to the island and occupied the capital of Apia on March 14, 1899, after a battle and bombardment at the port city. Further, American, British and Samoan forces engaged in several actions against the rebels over the course of a few months. When the conflict ended, the United States gained control of eastern Samoa, which is today's American Samoa, and the western half of the archipelago was taken by Germany, creating the short-lived German Samoa that was conquered during World War I. Disbandment. In 1903, the Pacific Squadron consisted of the armored cruiser US New York, the protected cruiser US Boston, the unprotected cruiser US Marblehead, and the gunboat Ranger. In early 1907, the U.S. Navy abolished both the Pacific Squadron and the United States Asiatic Fleet and established the new United States Pacific Fleet. The ships and personnel of the Asiatic Fleet became the first squadron of the Pacific Fleet, while the ships and personnel of the Pacific Squadron became the Pacific Fleet's second squadron. Commanders-in-Chief. Pacific Squadron Captain John Downes 1818–1820. Captain Charles Goodwin Ridgely 1820–1821. Commodore Charles Stewart 1821–1823. Commodore Isaac Hull 1823–1827. Commodore Jacob Jones 1826–1829. Commodore Charles C.B. Thompson 1829–1831. Commodore John Downes 1832–1834. Commodore Alexander Scammell Wadsworth 1834–1836. Commodore Henry E. Ballard 1837–1839. Commodore Alexander Claxton 1839–1841. Commodore Thomas Ap Catesby Jones 1842–1843. Commodore Alexander J. Dallas 1843–1844. Captain James Armstrong 1844, Commodore John Drake Sloat 1844–1846, Commodore Robert Field Stockton 1846, Commodore James Biddle March 2, July 19, 1847, Commodore W. Branford Shubrick 1847–1848, Commodore Thomas Ap Catesby Jones 1848–1850, Commodore Charles S. Macaulay 1850–1853, Commodore Bladen Dulany 1853–1855, Commodore William Mervyn September 1855 October 1857, Commodore John C. Long 1857–1859, Commodore John B. Montgomery 1859 January 2, 1862, Acting Rear Admiral Charles H. Bell January 2, 1862 October 25, 1864, Rear Admiral George F. Pearson October 4, 1864–1866, North Pacific Squadron 1866–1869 Rear Admiral Henry A. Thatcher 1866–1868, Rear Admiral Thomas D. Craven 1868–1869, South Pacific Squadron 1866–1869 Rear Admiral George F. Pearson October 25, 1866–1867, Rear Admiral John A. B. Dahlgren 1867–1869, Rear Admiral Thomas Turner 1869–1870, Pacific Station 1872–1878 Rear Admiral Thomas Turner 1869–1870, Rear Admiral John Ancrum Winslow 1870–1872, Rear Admiral John J. Army September 1873 July 1876, Pacific Squadron 1878–1907 Rear Admiral Christopher Raymond Perry Rogers 1878–1880, Rear Admiral Thomas H. Stevens 1880–1881, Rear Admiral Lewis Kimberly 1887–1890, Commodore Joseph S. Scarrett 1892–1893, Rear Admiral John Irwin 1893–1894, Rear Admiral Lester A. Beardsley 1894–1897, Rear Admiral J. N. Miller July 27, 1898, Rear Admiral Albert Katz 1898–1901, Rear Admiral Silas Casey III 1901–1903, Rear Admiral Henry Glass 1903 March 1905, Rear Admiral Caspar Frederick Goodrich 1905–1906, Rear Admiral William T. Swinburne 1906–1907, Ships 1845–1849 Independence Frigate 54 guns, 500 crew. Congress Frigate 44 guns, 480 crew. Savannah Frigate 44 guns, 480 crew. Columbus Ship of the Line 74 guns, 780 crew. Portsmouth sloop 20 guns, 200 crew. Cyane sloop 20 guns, 200 crew. Levant sloop 20 guns, 200 crew. Preble sloop 16 guns, 150 crew. Stevenson's Convoy Escort Dale sloop 16 guns, 150 crew. Erie storeship 4 guns, UK crew. Relief storeship 408 tons, 6 guns, UK crew. Warren storeship 691 tons, 18 guns, UK crew. Brutus storeship for Stevenson's regiment, chartered. Libertad schooner, UK guns, 20 crew, plus other ships captured during the war against Mexico. 1851 Savannah frigate, 44 guns, 480 crew. Raritan frigate, 44 guns, 480 crew. Falmouth sloop, 20 guns, 200 crew. St. Mary's sloop, 20 guns, 200 crew. Vandalia sloop, 20 guns, 200 crew. Vincennes sloop, 20 guns, 200 crew. Warren storeship, 20 guns, 200 crew. Lexington storeship. Southampton storeship. Supply storeship. Massachusetts steamer. 1861 Lancaster screw sloop of war, 24 x 9 in smoothbore Dahlgren guns, 1 x 2 in smoothbore Dahlgren gun, 2 x 30-pounder Parrott rifles, 367 men. Saranac side-wheel steam sloop of war, 9 x 8-inch guns, complement unknown. Wyoming screw sloop of war, 2 x 11 in smoothbore Dahlgren guns, 1 x 60-pounder Parrott rifle, 3 x 32-pounder guns, 198 men. Narragansett second-class screw sloop of war, 1 x 11 in gun, 4 x 32-pounder guns, 50 men. St. Mary's sloop of war, 16 x 32-pounder guns, 6 x 8 in guns, 195 men. Cyan sloop, 20 guns, 200 crew. Camanche Passat class monitor, 2 x 15-inch smoothbore cannons, 76 men. Shubrick lighthouse tender steamer,